My name's Tim Olson. I'm on the Professional Development Committee for the Staff Employee Association. And we have Matt Garish here with us today. Matt is the Director of Social Media for USU. And he's going to instruct us on a little bit of LinkedIn, how to manage that for ourselves, as well as a little bit for any of those professional accounts that we may oversee. Matt's been in social media, leading social media in higher education for a decade now. And I've worked with him quite a bit over the last few years during his time at Utah State, and he has a lot of good advice to offer. So Matt, take it away. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Tim. So today we're just going to go over some LinkedIn basics. I understand that LinkedIn is a very unique social media platform from the standpoint where some people have never used it. Some people are what I call expert users. And other people are only temporary expert users where they only ever get on LinkedIn when they're looking or hunting for a job, or if they're hiring for somebody, and then they leave it by the wayside for years or months on end. So I understand that your experience on LinkedIn might vary in a really wide range from everybody in the room today. I do see a handful of faces in here that I recognize. It's good to see you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick, and we're just going to dive right in, and we're going to talk about some basic level stuff, but we're going to leave plenty of time afterwards for questions and stuff like that. And we'll do our best to answer them, and I'll try to go through LinkedIn in my actual browser as well to address any of those questions. So let's go ahead and share my computer really quick. Okay, everybody can see the slide deck okay? Great. All right, so we're just going to jump right in here. So using LinkedIn, usually in a room full of people, I'd ask you to do a show of hands, right? Like, how many of you are active on LinkedIn, right? How many of you are not active on LinkedIn? I wonder if we can do polls in Zoom. I should have asked that beforehand. But I guess we should start from the very beginning, because some people might just not be familiar with LinkedIn at all. But it is technically considered a social media channel or platform, whatever you want to call it. But it's unique from the standpoint that it's used strictly for professional purposes. So it can be for a number of different things. Anyone who's looking to advance their career. It can include people from various professional backgrounds. What, did I just pull that on the top of the screen? There we go. Anyone from small business owners to students to job seekers to businesses. You can really tap into a number of different things on LinkedIn that are really, really beneficial. I find it personally most useful just for learning more skills that are unique to my job. And we'll talk a little bit about things like LinkedIn Learning and LinkedIn groups and places that you can kind of bolster your expertise in whatever area it is that you work in. Hey, polls. Thank you, Tim. Okay, so there are a number of benefits to using LinkedIn, and it can really benefit anybody who's working in any way, shape, or form. But a couple of things to look at here is that recruiters, especially in the private sector, I don't know how active HR is with the government sector, like here at USU, in terms of using LinkedIn to vet future employees or to hire them. But in the private sector, at least 93% of recruiters are using it to find their employees. That's where they're posting their jobs. That's where they're making their hires. Almost 90% of them are using it to screen their applicants, especially if there's a large number of applicants. If you posted a position that you're getting, more than 20, 30, 50, even hundreds of applicants, depending on the job. There's a lot of useful tools in LinkedIn for you that you can screen out people quickly to make your hiring process more efficient. So it is very popular for that standpoint. And it also increases your personal brand's visibility on Google. If you haven't done it yet, I'm sure you've probably been recommended it at some point in your career to Google yourself. It's a good practice to do at least once every year or so, just to kind of see what pops up on the internet when you Google your name. But LinkedIn, along with a lot of the other social media platforms, they rank highly in Google's search engine algorithm. So if you have an active LinkedIn account tied to your name, if someone Googles your name, it's a likelihood that that's going to be one of the first things that pops up on a Google search for your name is your LinkedIn account. That along with a Facebook account. So it is kind of your online first impression. And if job seekers are looking to potentially hire you and they Google your name, and if they see that you aren't particularly active on LinkedIn, that could be one of those things that is a difference maker between you and, let's say, another candidate who is active on LinkedIn. So just food for thought on that front. One other benefit that I personally really liked about this is it's just like a digital Rolodex of all my contacts. Some of you in the room might still keep an actual Rolodex of business cards or maybe an address book and stuff like that. And LinkedIn kind of makes it so you don't have to do that anymore. It's all there. It's all curated for you right at the tip of your fingertips on your phone or on your computer. Okay, so now that we kind of just got a very brief introduction to what LinkedIn is, I'm just going to go through a handful of tips. This is just going to be the basics. Like I said, again, there's so much you can do on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to touch base with any of you offline to walk you through any of those other little things. But here's just one thing that's to do before you even get started playing around with an account. So you've created your LinkedIn account, you've signed up for it, right? You've entered your email address and all that stuff, and you're starting from scratch. One thing that I highly recommend everybody doing is turning off notifications for your edits. For those of you in the room who are active on LinkedIn, you probably get annoyed when you see another person posting every tiny little change to their profile and it's popping up in your feed as an update and you're seeing it over and over and over again. Unfortunately, LinkedIn, when it does that, it defaults to posting an update every time you change your profile. However, you can disable that. So I'd say right from the get-go, just go ahead and disable it. These are the step-by-step instructions on how you can do that here, but here's what it actually looks like in practice for disabling the notifications for when you update your profile. And this will just give you the freedom of mind of knowing that you're not going to be accidentally annoying people as you're curating your LinkedIn profile. But you just take these steps here, and we'll make this slide deck available to everybody afterwards, so you can write this down if you need to. You just switch that button off there. Okay. So now we're editing the profiles. First things first is we got to take care of the pictures. And I know that's it seems like a self-explanatory, easy thing, but your photos on your social media accounts, specifically on LinkedIn, they matter a great deal. Especially if you're in the shoes of a recruiter who's sifting through a long list of applications and they're looking at LinkedIn profiles. What your profile image looks like can say a lot about you, whether it's accurate or not. So think about having something that's professional, high quality, and actually looks like you, right? How many of you have ever hired somebody or met somebody for the first time in person after only communicating with them digitally, and you find that they don't look anything like their profile photo anymore? And it can be a little disarming. I'd also think it's just really good to be transparent, about your appearance and things like that. So have an updated, accurate photo that actually looks like you. And try your best to make it look like it was taken in a studio. I mean, you can still do some really nice looking photos just on your camera phones. And we'll take a look at a couple of other examples of good profile photos versus what I consider to be poor profile photos here in just a second. But on top of that, you also have your background photo. So your background photo is your cover photo, right? That's that big banner that sits across the top. You've seen them on Facebook, on Twitter, right? That's another thing that's often overlooked. One strategy I often use, because I have the benefit of working at a gorgeous university with an excellent campus beauty shots, is I just use a photo of Utah State University, because right there I'm communicating to the public, this is my place of work, this is where my priorities are, this defines a lot about me professionally, that this is an important place for me. So your background photo is another thing to consider. Okay, so here's some profile photos. Can you see some differences in here? Right? The photos that look like they were taken while you're driving, things that maybe are older photos that are old quality, right? Where the lighting's really poor, or it's washed out, or there's a lot of distractions behind you, or maybe you're just cropped poorly in the photo, like the top of your head's cropped off, or you're you can see in this photo here on the bottom right, it's clearly as somebody was posing with somebody else and they cropped them out for it. If I'm hiring and I'm looking through these 6, it's not going to make or break if I'm going to hire somebody or not, right? But if the devil's in the details, and these are just little things you can do to just make yourself look that much better in digital space. In case you were curious about dimensions, once you start getting into the weeds of digging through your phone or going to get photos to upload to your LinkedIn, These are the dimensions for those two types of photos I mentioned. So on the left, you have your profile photo, and on the right, or the top right, you have your cover photo. You've also heard it called your banner photo. So those are the pixel dimensions on there if you ever need to crop those accordingly. Okay, the next important thing here is your headline and about section. So the headline is a relatively new thing to LinkedIn that didn't used to exist about 3-4 years ago, and they added that in there. And your LinkedIn profile will default to your current job title if you don't change that. It'll just say, such and such position at such and such employer. But I find that the headline is a really good opportunity to say a little bit more about what you do professionally than necessarily regurgitating your job title for the 10th time on your LinkedIn profile. So in my,
It's just a Zoom presentation, so, okay, so what would,
that's someone was asking a question there. Yeah, so you can use it for your job title, and that's perfectly okay, but you do have an opportunity to customize it and personalize it a little bit more. For example, mine does not say social media director in it, or USU social media director. It says, I think it says social media director and new media consultant, because I also do work on the side for freelance. So it gives you the opportunity to kind of give a better 30,000-foot look of what you can do professionally. I'm going to use Tim here as an example here. Where did it go? So I'm going to quickly duck out of the slideshow here. So can everybody see Tim Molson's LinkedIn profile here? So this is a really good example, right? While Tim has opted to keep his headline as director of students, his actual position, his about section tells a little bit more about you, right? This is your little bio, right? Tim is more than just a director of students at USU. He's also a father and a sports junkie, right? It just kind of gives people a little bit more insight to who you are and makes you stand out as an individual a little bit more. So this is a good place to be a little bit creative, especially after knowing that later you're going to be getting into the weeds of putting in your full job description and your responsibilities and all those types of things. Okay. Let's go back to presentation mode here. Okay, are we back in? Yep. Okay, so this is where I would recommend spending a great deal of time when you're first setting up your LinkedIn profile. And this is where you're basically going to be putting your resume in. However, you've got a lot more flexibility and a lot more room here to really get into the nitty gritty about your professional experience, both in your current position and your old ones. As you're doing this, keep in mind, if you've had prior jobs that aren't necessarily relevant to the career field you're working in now, or maybe if you have aspirations to work in a different company or for a different employer or for a different position, right, a different promotion, keeping things on your LinkedIn profile that aren't particularly relevant to those positions, those could potentially hurt you if somebody comes across your profile and they're vetting you for a job, right? So keep that in mind. It's a good idea to go and just kind of revisit and recheck these as you make them in your career. Here's just a quick look on how you can edit those. It's typical stuff, right? Any job application you've ever done, but I take advantage of this skills section here. This is a really cool thing because you can go in there and put tags for specific skills that you have on each job. You can highlight like maybe your top 5 or your top 3 most important parts of that job in like 1 or 2 words. One reason that's really helpful too is LinkedIn tracks when you add those. So when you start getting posts in your main feed for LinkedIn, it's going to start showing you more content that's relevant to these skills that you have tagged on your profile. So while you may be professionally connected to people that don't necessarily work in your career field, this will increase the likelihood that you're going to start seeing other people who work in similar industries to you and the things that they're posting on LinkedIn. Okay, another cool section is your certifications, any additional expertise that you have, your awards, honors. These little extras are the things that can really set you apart from your competition out there in digital space, instead of just having kind of like the bare minimum resume sitting out there. They're a really good opportunity for you to show those extra things that you do that don't necessarily show up or that you don't have room to put on a traditional resume when you're applying for a job. And they just give you those extra layers of credibility to show that like you're really good at what you do, and here's why, because I've done this, 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 and this. I'm going to show you a quick example of some of the ones I have here on mine. So outside of your education, licenses and certifications, right? You can go in here, whoops, and you can add all sorts of different stuff on here. It's really customizable. You can upload images. Let's say if you have a certificate, you can have a URL that goes to a website that shows something cool you've done. There's a number of different cool things you can do in here. I'm actually going to back up a little bit as well because, oh no, my screen is frozen. There we go. Another thing you can do that shows an extra layer is you can add items into your documents here, or into your job listings here. So if you go and edit the position, and you can do this in your current position or in any old ones, you can go in here and add things like, for example, I put out social media reports that I'm pretty proud of every year. I think that's a cool thing to demonstrate some of the back end work that I do for my job. So you can add things like images or PDF documents, videos. You can add in here all sorts of media that you can do to support the skill sets that you have listed for that job. So that's a nice little touch that I like to try and update whenever I have things that are relevant in there. You can see a few other ones I had in a previous position there. Okay, back to presentation mode again. Okay. Okay, so think about a little bit about how you behave on social media in general, right? Like if you're on Facebook, if you're on Instagram, if the few of you still might be on Twitter, think about the types of behaviors you do and the types of things you engage with. Like, what types of stuff do I see on my feed that I like? You know, what do I like? What do I want to see on there? That's really important on LinkedIn too. It's the same concept. So follow things that you're interested professionally, right? So you're not necessarily there to just network with other people you've worked with, but follow the companies that you might want to work for someday. Maybe companies that you aspire to work for, or on the flip side, you can also look at competitors to see what they're doing. So you have the opportunity to search and follow different companies or industries that gives you kind of an opportunity to network with other people in those industries. It's really cool because if you just go up into the search bar at the top in LinkedIn, you can search in basically anything, right? I could search photography and it's going to give me a whole list of things. It's going to give me a list of people that are working in photography. It's going to give me suggestions for companies that are hiring photographers. It's also going to give me groups where people get together and discuss photography. So think about the things you're interested in and your skills, and go cultivate those and add those to your search. It's really helpful. And even if you're not going into LinkedIn every day, if you're just checking in once a week or once a month, you want what you're seeing in there to be relevant and you don't want your time to be wasted. So follow stuff outside of just people. Okay, groups. Groups are my personal favorite when it comes to LinkedIn, and same with Facebook now. I use a lot of groups. I find this is the most beneficial place for me to continue learning and improving what I do professionally. It's just crowdsourcing, right? You have the opportunity to talk to other people that are doing similar things where you can test out ideas, learn new tips and tricks of your trades. And groups are an excellent opportunity to do that. They're basically set up the same way for as Facebook groups, for any of you who've ever been in Facebook groups before, except for, you know, all of the interests are going to be professionally related, right? We're not talking about taking care of backyard chickens or knitting or baseball card collecting, right? You know, I'm going to follow things like, for me, writing, you know, photography, public relations, graphic design groups, things like that. You know, you can get really granular where there's groups just for certain types of softwares that you might be using in your job. You know, how to maximize your Microsoft Office suite type stuff, Excel groups. People are really cool because they can show you all sorts of little shortcuts and cool little things for the things that you already are actively using, but maybe you just didn't know about. So go and do some searching. Just not Google, search in the top of the LinkedIn bar, a whole bunch of keywords of things that you do in your job, types of software you use, types of technology you use, and see what you can find. You'd be shocked at the number of different groups that are out there. Okay, so another fun thing excuse me, let me drink of water here. Is the recommendations and endorsements section. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what those look like, because I feel like that's kind of a weird thing to wrap your head around if you haven't seen them on here. So I'm going to back up one more. So recommendations and endorsements are really awesome ways that you can both engage with your colleagues and show off your skill sets a little bit more, because you're getting that word of mouth recognition from your peers, instead of you just bragging and saying you do certain things. You have other people saying you're doing things. Again, layers of credibility. So you can go to places, where is it at on here? Why am I not seeing them? Usually right here, but now, of course, when I've got them pulled up, I'm not seeing recommendations on here. My apologies. They usually pop up right here. I'm not seeing them for some reason. My apologies for that. I'm gonna have to figure out what's going on here and see why I'm not seeing recommendations or the endorsements. But they essentially give you the opportunity to go and look at somebody else's social media profile and look at those skills. You know how you tag those skills we talked about here in your job positions, and you can go and say, and you can just click through and be like, oh yeah, Tim, customer service, right? I'm just making stuff up, Tim, I apologize. I know for a fact Tim's really good at customer service. I've seen him do it, and you can click endorse and it's going to show up as endorsed on Tim's profile, and it's going to have a number next to it. 17 people endorsed Tim Olson for customer service, and it's going to have a stacked list of skill sets with a bunch of numbers and faces for all the different people that have endorsed. Actively do that. That's a really good practice to both kind of just get your name out there and show that you are active in LinkedIn, but it also is nice to just network and participate with your peers and just kind of spread goodwill. I'm not necessarily saying you have to be disingenuous or dishonest when you're doing these things, but it's a good practice to go in there and take a look at other people that you've worked with LinkedIn profiles and give them a little bit of love for what they've done. And you can even take it a step further. So other than just recommending Tim for customer service, you can basically go in there and write full testimonials where I can recommend Tim, where I can write several paragraphs about why I've worked with Tim, why I think he's an excellent employee and why he's really good at what he does, and the things that this is an example of what he did for me that really stood out. Like those are a good way to go the extra mile, not only to spread the love, but it increases the likelihood that they're going to probably leave you a recommendation or endorsement, and that's going to look great on your LinkedIn profile, right? When that job you've applied for is sifting through it and taking a look at it. Those endorsements go a long way, right? They're extra professional references, if you will. Okay, so you know how I mentioned like the backyard chickens and the baseball card collecting and all those things we like to do and talk about in our other social media platforms. It is important to remember, though, that when we're using LinkedIn, it is very different from most other social media channels, in that you don't necessarily want to be posting the same things that you're posting on Facebook on your LinkedIn account, right? You want to try your best to keep it related to your work life. Sharing news and updates from the people that you've connected with about your job or about your industry, maybe about the skills that you're using. So, this isn't a great place for memes. It's not a good place for photos of your pets, of your coffee and all of those types of things. You will find that your engagement will be pretty low if you try that on LinkedIn, and it's just going to increase the likelihood that your connections are going to unfollow you. And then they won't be able to see when you're actually posting professional content that's relevant. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. It's a hotly debated topic right now on LinkedIn, especially as a lot of people are migrating to and from other social media platforms, is that they're making a concerted effort to try to keep it professional. So. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay. So, we've talked about a lot of the different components to LinkedIn that are super helpful, but the real magic of LinkedIn lies in being social. Just like every other social media platform, even though this one is based in professional stuff, the magic is what you make it, right? So you actually have to spend a little bit of time in there, even if you just dedicate 5 to 10 minutes of your week logging in your LinkedIn account and just kind of browsing through your timeline and seeing what types of things are in there. but when you are liking and commenting and sharing people's blog posts or their career updates or their job changes, those are the types of things that just increase your visibility and spread your brand, right? We talked about SEO. Every time that you comment on somebody else's post, that's going to increase the visibility that you're an active professional out there that is maybe potentially working in the same career field as this person, to all of that person's connections as well, not just your connections. So it's a really good way to just kind of broaden your professional reach just by spending a little time in there and actually talking to people. Even if you're an introvert, just liking and sharing is a good way to do that if you don't want to be on there commenting and stuff like that. And it doesn't take as much time as you think. Like I said, you can just take a few minutes a week, just log in, check things out, engage a little bit, but it keeps your profile active. It keeps your name high in the Google search engine. So just get in there and engage with people. But on the flip side of that, just like with the other social platforms, you do eventually you start to walk a fine line between overdoing it, right? One thing that I have noticed for people who are jumping right into LinkedIn for the first time, there's a tendency when you get this huge screen full of people that are potential recommendations that you might want to connect with, to just click all those buttons. And I'm just going to connect with everybody. I'm going to be like the networking king or queen here. And I'm going to have, 20,000 connections and I'm going to know everybody, right? But, just like on other social media platforms, you find that the quality and the relevance of the people that you're connecting with is much more beneficial than the number of people that you're connecting with. So be a little thoughtful about who you're sending those connection requests to. There are a variety of different philosophies on how certain people do that on LinkedIn. Like for me, for example, when I receive a request to connect on LinkedIn, if I don't even recognize that person's name, if I've never worked with them in any professional capacity, even if it's a small capacity, I usually won't accept it. Unless, however, I see it's maybe at a company that I know that I want to work for, right? Again, thinking forward to other potential networking opportunities. There is a tendency for some people to just send a million of those, and you will get a lot of connection requests from people you do not know. And that's up to you to decide if you want to bring those people into your professional LinkedIn sphere, for lack of a better term. Okay, so again, with email notifications, one thing I highly recommend doing is turning on some of those email notifications in LinkedIn. But be careful, because I know they can get really annoying and your emails are already chock full as it is. But when going back to what we talked about with being active and engaging, anytime somebody sends you a connection request, or maybe somebody mentions you in a comment or tags you in a post, you want to know when that happens so that you can go and engage with it, whether it's just liking it or sharing it in a pretty timely manner. So turning on those notifications for certain things that you deem are important are really good to do. I'm going to show you how to do that here really quick if LinkedIn wants to cooperate this time. So you just go back into your settings. I'm going to back up one more stage here, just so you know where to find your settings. So you just go and click on your Me profile up here, click Settings and Privacy. And then from here, you're going to go to your communications. And this is where you can manage your push notifications, whether they're the pings to your phone, the emails, or which little red icons you get on LinkedIn and how often you want to be notified when you're actually logged into LinkedIn. So here you can go in there and really customize all of it. Your conversations, you can go and check off all the boxes. So get in there and just kind of figure out how much email is too much. But I highly recommend at least leaving them on just for when you get connection requests, or if somebody sends you a direct message, or if they mention you by name in someone else's content. So in here, when we talk about the replies, right, it makes your post visible to other people's networks. Some of you probably seen those little badges on LinkedIn next to somebody's name where it's like first level connection, second level connection, third degree connection. And you're like, what the crap does that even mean? So here's a quick breakdown of that for you. So first degree connections are the people that you have directly accepted or sent connection requests where they've been accepted on LinkedIn. That's their first degree. Secondary connections are anybody who's connected with somebody you're connected with, right? And then third degree, we're just going one more step further, right? People who are connected to your secondary connections are third level. That's as far as LinkedIn shows it, but it's another good way to go and look at other people's connections to see if there's other opportunities to network with certain people that you may not have been aware of that are active on LinkedIn. So that's just a quick, what's the word I'm looking for? Glossary, in case you weren't familiar with those terms. Okay. So one other thing, and HR is going to love me for giving a shout out here, that I highly recommend everybody take advantage of is LinkedIn Learning. There are so many online courses available out there to improve your skill sets, but LinkedIn Learning has probably the most robust of those. There's a plethora of things out there from every possible interest that you want to get better on. There's probably a LinkedIn Learning course for it. A lot of those come with certifications, which you can then go there for and upload and add to your LinkedIn profile. And I strongly recommend taking advantages of these if you can. For those of you who sign up to pay for LinkedIn Premium, which comes with a handful of perks, LinkedIn Learning is free to you. That's part of what you're paying for as a LinkedIn Premium member. But even if you're not a premium member, I'm not a premium member. I haven't found the ROI to be there for me personally, although I know a lot of people get a lot out of it. LinkedIn Learning is pretty inexpensive, even if you just wanted to sign up to take one class, right? If you want to pay for LinkedIn Premium for 1 month to pay the $19.99 to have that, that's worth it in my mind to have a nice extra thing I can add on my resume is something that I've learned in my skill set, right? I did one recently on Google Analytics that was super helpful to help me understand something that one of my colleagues was trying to explain to me. And, you know, that was $20 well worth it in my mind. So take advantage of it if you can. Even if you're just kind of curious, you can go in there and look at what LinkedIn Learning has to offer. There is so much in there. I thought I had them pulled up here. Where are all my LinkedIn Learnings? Oh, we can just pull it up here. Where's it at here? Learning. You just go click Learning in here, and it's going to instantly start giving you a whole bunch of recommendations based off what you've already identified in your LinkedIn profile, which is really nice. Although it's having a hard time loading. LinkedIn's having a really hard time today. What timing for this training, right? But anyways, you can see at least there's usually an index of icons here full of all of the different courses they have to offer, and you can even search them in here. So,
Hey, Matt.
yes.
Naturally, while we're doing this training, Leslie and I have noticed, I imagine a few others have noticed, I think there's something going on with LinkedIn right now. Nothing seems to be loading very well, or like
I think they're having a hard time right now. Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, we couldn't look up your page or anything. So
it must be a heavy traffic. Okay, so I'm glad it's not just me then. It's just,
yeah, not just you.
Cool. Well, I apologize. I generally don't ever have problems with LinkedIn when I go online in terms of traffic. It's usually like Facebook or Twitter that goes down. But yeah.
Hey, Matt, I have a question about LinkedIn Learning. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty active on it. I take advantage of it and really enjoy a lot of the classes and courses that they have in there. So after completing, for example, a course, will you recommend sharing it with everyone? Hey, I just completed this course, because I don't think I've ever done that. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a good strategy. I mean, I think it is helpful if you feel comfortable with spreading the word to all of your connections that you have improved or learned more about a certain skill set. I think there's value in clicking that button and sharing it. However, maybe you're self-conscious about like the fact that you didn't know maybe about something, and that's why you went to LinkedIn Learning in the first place, and you don't want to necessarily share to the whole world that you're just learning about this. I can see it from both sides. So it's really just a matter of personal preference, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I had a screen recording and I totally forgot about it. My apologies. So there you go. You can kind of see what some of the LinkedIn learnings are. We don't need it to be working right now. There's tons in there, tons and tons. And then you can also dive into the experts that teach the courses, which is really cool.
Hey, Matt, do you mind if I chime in just real quick here as well? This is Leslie Buxton, and I actually oversee our LinkedIn Learning for the
Yeah.
So just so you know, all benefited employees have access to LinkedIn Learning free because USU pays for it for you. I will send all the links as a follow-up to everybody that attends today on how to set that up if you want to link your LinkedIn Learning account with USU with your LinkedIn account. And I can confirm there's something going on with LinkedIn today. This is very rare, and it just so happens to be when Matt's presenting. But I'm in communication with our representative right now to try and figure out what's wrong. So
Oh,
thank
shoot,
you.
maybe I can get you guys to reimburse me those 20 bucks that I spent for my Google Analytics class.
Yes, it's free,
I'm
Matt.
totally
Don't
kidding.
pay.
Totally kidding. It was worth it. So yeah, keep taking advantage of your learning on LinkedIn. It's awesome. Let's see here. Okay. So that is just a brief, very brief 30,000 foot overview of some of the main things that you can take advantage of in LinkedIn. And there is a lot more to it. There's some nuances to some of those things we talked about. But right now, I just kind of wanted to open things up to questions, and I'll do my best to help you. Maybe Leslie can jump in if there's certain things I don't know about. So yeah.
It's Kalilu again. So any tips on how to be more visible without being kind of overbearing?
I think consistency is the key. I don't think you necessarily need to be somebody that's in there posting updates about your career all the time, but consistently logging in and just going in there and liking and commenting on stuff. Even if it's just once a while. I think that does the job. All right. There are some people that are daily users that go in there and do that stuff every single day. I think you do run a little bit of risk if you just kind of overdo it and you're spending hours on end, and you've all seen it, right? The mouthfeel when you go into any social media platform and you can see that one person that's posted 1 million times, and it can be a little obnoxious maybe. So just try to think about how this might look to all of my followers when you're devising your strategy of how often I want to be engaging on there. But I think consistency is key. So even if you choose, I'm not going to do a ton, but I want to be active, make sure you set yourself like a little quota, right? I'm going to go in there for 5 minutes on a Monday and go congratulate, Leslie, who got her promotion in HR. Oh, cool. That's in there. Congratulations. Write a little note, stuff like that. Those things are really good. And it just helps keep it, again, high in the SEO without being kind of overbearing and obnoxious to your followers.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I know that's not like a formulaic answer to your question there, because I do think a lot of it is preference, but.
Any recommendations on if you're running a page for a group on building that network, building that audience?
Yeah, the best place to start for that is to go with your immediate connections, right? I assume if you've created a Facebook, or not a Facebook, a LinkedIn group, that it's going to be about something where you are currently working. So your immediate connections are a good place to go and kind of get the initial surge of followers and active participants in the group. But you can send invites to the groups as well. There's an option in there that you can send invites to other connections in there. I think that also might be a premium feature. Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong with that. You have more access in terms of what invites and messages and email you can send to people if you pay for LinkedIn Premium.
I'm actually not an expert on the premium specifically, Matt. I'm more so LinkedIn Learning itself. So I think you're correct, though.
Yeah, but groups are awesome. They're one of my favorite things in there. So if you have any groups that you'd recommend, please let me know and I'll check them out.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I have heard in other trainings that it's often helpful to have or hire someone to help you make your LinkedIn look fabulous and your resume and everything look really great. So I have a two-part question. One, do you recommend that? And two, does anyone on here know if like our career services offers such a thing for employees?
For the second part, I have no idea. I think maybe Leslie would know a little more on that one. But on the first part, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I would encourage all of you to understand that this is within your ability to do. Like LinkedIn's really not that difficult. That's part of why I think we do some of these trainings, is to show you like this isn't too difficult if you just spend a little bit of time with it up front, and you'll find this isn't too bad. I think you are all fully capable of building out amazing looking LinkedIn profiles without having to spend any additional money out of your pocket to hire a consultant or an expert. But, they're experts for a reason and they can be really helpful. So I guess the return on investment for that will be up to you. So I don't see any harm with it, but I think you could probably do it on your own.
Matt, we had a question early on in the chat, just as far as setting up LinkedIn, if you haven't done it before, just using, like, what email should you use? Should you use your USU email or just a personal one, or, kind of those beginning steps?
That's a really good question. And I actually should have addressed that in this presentation. That was an oversight on my part. I strongly discourage using your work email for your LinkedIn profile because you never know what your career is going to look like at certain phases of your life. It can be an easy thing to forget about that's the one that's tied to your LinkedIn account. Like, let's say you move on to another company, change jobs, and maybe you lose access to that email and you have issues getting back into your LinkedIn account. There's a number of different things that can go wrong by using your work email on LinkedIn. So I do strongly suggest using a personal one. But that being said, especially if you're a LinkedIn Premium member, your connections will have access to your email address. So, if you have that really, really old personal email address like I do, where I'm still on like Hotmail and I said some really immature tag, when I made that email as a high school teenager, that might not be the best email address to have tied to my LinkedIn account. So also be thoughtful about what email you're putting, even when you're using your personal one. So I think mine says swag since 1998 in it. Y'all are easy. Thought you were going to be grilling me on this.
Matt, I'll ask you a question because I think, again, this is probably a question of preference, but I get I guess I get requests for people to friend me a lot that I have no idea who they are or how they got connected with me. So one thing that I'm always asking myself, should I add them? Because maybe I should just be more friendly with other people and just connect. But I guess one thing that I've started doing is if people send me a request to become connections, is I send them a message and I say, hey, I saw that you want to connect. Can you tell me a couple of things about yourself because I don't know you?
Mm-hmm.
And those that respond, usually I'll go ahead and connect with them. But those that don't, I'm just a little hesitant sometimes. But have you got any other tips in that regard as to, when people add you that you don't know, or how you would prefer to do that?
I like that strategy a lot, actually, because while it does require a little extra of your time to kind of investigate by asking them like, hey, what's up? That could be a good way to get to the bottom of if this person is worthwhile for me to be connected with. And if you don't get a response from them, that might get easier for you to go ahead and, disconnect from them on there. One thing that I have found to be a mild frustration that I get is I get a lot of connection requests from vendors. So maybe somebody's caught wind about your specific job and they're a vendor that you get regular sales calls or emails from, and that they're sending out mass connection requests to everybody like you who has a similar job title because they're looking for potential clients. That's another thing to look out for. That's kind of a red flag for me when I see connection requests from people I don't know. Usually I can kind of tell just by looking at what their job description is, right? That's usually a really good indicator to me if this is something that I want to spend my time connecting with. So I know there's a handful of companies that I try not to associate with because I get a lot of sales calls from them. And if I see that in the title, I just assume that's somebody who's going to be sending me DMs trying to talk me into setting up a 30-minute, Zoom chat with them where they can pitch me their service. And that might be something you're interested in. And if it is, great. But if it's not, if you don't want to deal with that, that could be another filter when you get those unrecognized connection requests. Ooh, I like Tim's email from high school. That's a good one. And it's Hotmail too. So I think Tim and I may have gone to high school at the same time. Wow. Well, there's no more questions. That's all I've got for everybody. Again, I'm sure Tim has my contact information, and you're all welcome to reach out to me at any time. That's also part of my job here at USU, is to running the social medias to kind of help you all with this type of stuff as well. So,
Matt, we did just have a question come in the chat.
Yes. Let's see here. We talk about your personal LinkedIn account. Are you experienced in setting up business pages and best practice for promoting brand awareness? Oh, I could bore you to death for a whole nother hour about this one. Actually, full disclosure, when we first they first reached out to me to talk to you today, I thought this is what we were going to be discussing. That might be one, Mara, where I'd be happy to meet with you on one-on-one, because that's a whole different strategy and how you set those up. So
Wonderful. Let's set a time and maybe I can catch up with you. That'd be great.
yeah, let's definitely do that.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. You too, Carrie. We can definitely talk about that, because we do manage the official Utah State University LinkedIn page here, and I'm also admins on like the alumni groups and stuff like that. So.
All right, Matt. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for having me. Let me bore you to death for an hour talking about social. Stop sharing my screen here.